Hey guys, welcome to a new video. First, I just want to say that I've been offline for a while. I finally got positive nailed on the thing, so that's wiped me out for about a month. So starting to feel better. Anyways, today's topic, or what I want to talk about, is a YouTuber named TechLead. I followed his stuff throughout the years. Last year, his ex took his kid to Japan, and now he's dealing with, the court ramifications of all that. So he posted a video basically talking about how child support is ruining him, and I kind of wanted to just go over this and play through some of it and talk a little bit about it, so we can just discuss it a little bit. So hopefully this works. I was having some technical difficulties earlier, but let's jump into this and see if I can get it to start.
Oh my God, I lost my child support case. This is going to destroy me. I have to pay like $5,000 per month in child support for the next 15 years or something like that.
So what I just want to jump in and just mention right off the bat here is what we think is fair in family court. Family court has a completely different idea. Now, just a little bit of background about TechLead. He's in California, so he's going through the California family court system. And he'll get into, I'll skip around this a little bit so we don't just completely replay his video, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to hear the whole uninterrupted thing. First thing, every state typically has a child support calculator. That calculator, you're going to input the numbers, and it's going to spit out whatever it is you're going to pay. Now, he will talk about in his video about how he had business expenses and stuff like that, and apparently it looks like his lawyer didn't do a very good job on this, and they just keyed in all the numbers, said, we don't care. All we care about is the maximum amount of money that you're bringing in on the bottom line. We don't care about expenses. We don't care about anything, and we're going to set the number to that. And that's basically what's happened with them.
So my retirement is out of the window now. I was going to retire last week actually, but it seems like I'm back onto YouTube now, churning out these videos. And I wanted to explain for you the child support situation for you. I recently lost my case because you too may find yourself having to pay child support someday, whether intentionally or even unintentionally, as so happens to many sports superstars. And I'll explain for you the calculations here. But before I begin, I want to clarify for you what happened. About 3 years ago, my Japanese wife just went.
So I remember when these videos came out, and I felt bad for the guy. Basically he just posted, his wife was just like, yep, I'm done with this. I'm moving and I'm going back to Japan, and I'm taking my son with me. And, he was stuck here. Now, one of the things, here's the thing. First thing right off the bat. And I think he intentionally didn't fight things. And everyone has to make your own decision. To be perfectly honest, if you listen to his whole video towards the end of it, he has a good perspective that'll probably maintain his sanity on this. Maybe he just makes so much money that the amount of money he's paying, it's a hit, but it's not going to be completely devastating. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure, but I will say that his attitude on this is pretty positive considering how bad this scenario is. But what I just want to say, if you find yourself in this situation, and this doesn't mean your wife runs off to Japan. If your wife leaves the state you are in and goes to visit family and doesn't come back, you need to absolutely understand that if you do not do anything, you are going to get destroyed in family court. And the problem with this is I understand what everyone's doing. It's like, okay, we're having a problem. She took the kids and went back, went to a different state. We're trying to work on it. And you, in good faith, think that you're trying to work on the relationship. 90% of the time, 99% of the time, what's really happening is the ex is strategically leaving your state, moving someplace else, waiting for residency or waiting to establish this new normal, and then is going to file for all the support and all the money. If you do not fight that immediately, I'll just say it this way, you're going to be fucked. So just be prepared and don't get yourself into a situation to where you are trying to be accommodating and then you find yourself in a scenario where the judge is like, well, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, you've obviously been okay with this because you haven't done a damn thing. And now as a result, we're dealing with, this scenario, and now let's just bring out the hammer.
They took our son, 3 years old at the time, and abducted him, taking him off to Japan. And about a year ago, I lost contact with them, and she has been blocking access ever since. So recently she came after me, hiring an American lawyer. And
So again, and I just want to just throw this out here. I mean, this is incredibly typical. You take you take possession of the child. You deny access. Don't let the other person talk to the child, visit with the child, have any visitation. And the sad reality is when you do that, then when you finally roll into court and they're saying, okay, what's the timeshare? Well, there's 0 and 100%. And they just start clickety-clacking and put out the number on that. Again, this is why it's really important whenever you first start out with this that you are strategic about what you're doing. The other thing is often people will say, whoever files first wins. The caveat on that is the person who files first, who has been planning to do this, is the one that wins. Because the target of all this, in this particular scenario, TechLeads here, is not understanding what they're dealing with. They're trying to salvage the relationship. They're trying to make amends. They're trying to do whatever. And they do not realize that the other person is running out the clock specifically for a tactical advantage in family court. So let's go ahead and hit play on this again.
After me for child support, and she's still up.
Whoops, sorry. Why are we not playing?
They're in Japan. Now, this is not a video meant to trash her or anything like that. I'm just here to try to educate you. That value is what I'm trying to provide for you. So this really isn't a personal video. And, some people, by the way, are going to say I'm a deadbeat dad.
So anyways, I just want to hit 2 things on this. You would think, right? I mean, you would think if you're looking at this and you're like, well, wait a minute, she took the kid out of the country. Now she's filing back in California for support. Well, the reality is she's not coming back. She did not come back to the United States and is sitting there in the courtroom doing this. This is all being done remotely. So TechLead here is still at a disadvantage because of this scenario. Now, my recommendation for them on top of this, and this was just probably more than likely was just in a preliminary hearing setting temporary support, temporary custody, and all those things. So they're going in, they're like, oh, okay, TechLeads makes millions of dollars. Fine. All right, we're going to key that in. And he doesn't get to see the kid because the kid's in Japan. And we'll key in the numbers and set a date for another status hearing. So he's paying probably the maximum amount that he will probably pay just during the temporary stage. And more than likely, as things progress, he'll be able to get that number reduced. That's typically what happens. It's like, especially in California, it's like they make it as effing painful as possible right off the bat. And then it changed. The same thing kind of happened to me. My number wasn't quite as high as his number. But the difference is I had 3 kids plus I had alimony that I was paying. Maybe he's not being nailed for alimony, but let's go ahead and jump back into this.
I want to clarify that, my son was the most important thing to me in my life. He was the one thing I could not lose. The most important element in my life that left me very much traumatized. And many fathers who end up losing their children do end up unliving, so to speak. And so really...
See, and he's he's absolutely right. Self-deleting. People get into this situation and the system is so crushing. And the ex, a toxic ex, is so effing vindictive. And they don't care about anybody else. They don't care about the child. They absolutely don't care about you. All they care about is themselves and maximizing every little thing that they can potentially get out of this. And this is what he's talking about. And this is what's happening. And the problem is that when you're going through this, you cannot comprehend that somebody would actually do this. I've talked to so many people, even when I do the coaching calls and stuff, where people will basically be saying to me, how is this? This can't be. Why? And it's like, I have to remind them, this person only cares about themselves. They do not give a flying F about anyone, your family, you, the child, the effect that this is going to have. All they are thinking about is themselves and how this is going to affect their life. They care about nothing else. And then they will turn around and they'll look at everything that they think they're entitled to and justify this in their own mind. Let's jump back into this.
The fact that I'm even here alive and somewhat productive is a feat in and of itself that requires tremendous emotional willpower. A lot of people say that I refer...
And he's absolutely right. The amount of willpower and perseverance it takes to survive this and to go through this and to have your entire world just ripped from you is incredibly tough. And so many people tell you just horrible advice. It's like, well, that's just the way it is. You're going to lose everything. I remember people telling me that. I'm like, wait a minute, what? This person is going to take everything from me, everything I've worked for the last, 2.5 decades has been obliterated in a moment. And you're telling me that I'm going to basically be a slave to this person and barely have a relationship with my kids? Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's not true. Make sure you watch my channel because I discuss a lot of this and help you get, undo a lot of that crap that's happening.
To my son in the third person as the child rather than my child. And the reason for that is because it just makes it too personal and emotional for me sometimes to talk about this matter. It's an emotional card.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right on that. And what you'll often find is the other person will use that possessive terminology. I mean, I don't know how many times in my situation it was my child, my kids. And I'm like, look, pumpkin, they're not your personal possessions. They are our children. Now, the situation that's different for TechLead here is he isn't seeing his kid. I mean, this has been going on for, God, this might actually be a couple of years now that I think about it. When I first saw that video that he posted about his wife taking the kids and leaving the country. Kids, a child. And, whenever the person takes your everything, your family's destroyed, and now you don't have your child. And then probably just as he's starting to make his peace with this, and he's just like, okay, this is my life. This is what I'm going to figure out. And he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. They don't leave well enough alone. It's like, wait a minute. How dare you? How dare you move on with your life and start maybe making amends and with yourself and just, living a life. Well, what can I do? I can go to court and really rub the salt in the wound. I can just rub in the fact that you don't get to see your kid. And on top of that, I'm going to take away your financial resources. You know, I mean, so he's going to be paying what did he say, $5,000 a month, and still not getting to see his kid. Now, the reality is, and this guy does have his head on straight, so you know, obviously he's making content, and he's a big, I mean, I think he's got like 1 million or 2 million subscribers. I mean, he's got a really big channel, and he doesn't really talk about this stuff much. He does tech stuff. Anyways, my point is this, is he's dealing with this in a pretty decent way. What I mean is he doesn't strike me as someone who's going to take a lot of the bait. He'll play the game through the courts, and more than likely he's going to get time back. Now, the problem is she really going to let him see the child? You know, that's where it gets complicated, but it'll probably get ordered the way how vindictive she's currently being. It wouldn't surprise me if she follows the patterns and the trends of just not following any of the custody, whatever, you know, whether it's FaceTime visitation or even, you know, the child, excuse me, is able to come see him for periods of time. With him being young, that's going to be a lot harder. Again, with him having more money and resources, that will actually help him deal with some of the other hoops that they'll make him jump through.
Rather than me being inhumane for any reason. But really, this is the thing. Whatever you value the most, your spouse will learn your weaknesses, what you treasure, and take that away from you in a bitter divorce when they're angry at you because they want to retaliate against you. You know, if I did not love my son, she probably would see no reason to block access, right? There would be no point in doing that. But because I do, she knows she can use that as leverage against me and to just exact pain upon me. And maybe that's really the post-breakup game, right? The other person blames you for having married.
See, and the problem with this is typically with a non-vindictive person, it can start like this, but at some point somebody's going to have some guilt and be like, okay, you know, Tech here wasn't really that bad of a guy, and, you know, it is the father of my child, and calm down. High conflict people will play this stupid game for the duration. I'm 10 years into it. Stupid ass games are still being played.
Them for having proposed to them because it turned out that they just wasted their time. You weren't who they thought they would be. You deceived them. You didn't play up to their entire expectations and imaginations of what a wonderful night.
See, technically he's wrong on this. Let's just say for the course of this channel, typically what we're talking about here is somebody who's narcissistic, probably cluster B personality disorder type. They're not necessarily trying to hurt him. She doesn't give a fuck about him. What she's doing is she cares about herself, and she cares about the possession and ownership of that child. And she wants to ensure that he is erased as much as possible, so there's no discussions about school, medical, anything, extracurricular activities. It's like, nope, let's phase you out to where I don't have to deal with you. I don't have to talk to you. I don't have to converse with you. You have no say in what's going on, and I can just live my life and pretend you don't exist. The gift with purchase in this scenario is that he is feeling a tremendous amount of pain, and she's winning on this. Now, the crazy part about this is you would think that somebody would want things to be calmer and they wouldn't play this type of game. You know, but the flip side to it is I'm sure his ex knows exactly the type of person he is, knows how he's going to respond, and is pushing his buttons and expecting him to respond in the way she anticipates that he's going to respond. All right, I'm going to zoom through some of this.
You would be. You know, it turns out you're human after all. But let me tell you what happened with child support court. I basically walked into the courtroom and I just lost. I got slaughtered in there. See, here's what happens.
Here's the thing. Just, and he's going to do an ad here in a second. But here's the thing. You have to understand what you're dealing with. Like what he's talking about, the reason he was slaughtered, in my opinion, is he went in thinking this is going to be fair. He walked in thinking, okay, my ex kidnapped our American child and took them to another country, there is gonna be a consequence for that. I'm sure that's what he thought. Tech leads, if you happen to watch this and you want to clarify, be my guest. But the pattern that typically happens is, and this is kind of even what I went through, you go in thinking it's going to be fair. So he probably walked into there thinking, okay, they are going to say, hey, this is BS. Hey, little miss, you need to bring this child back to the United States immediately and stop playing these games. That's not how this is going to play out, typically. The next thing is he figured, well, they're not going to do the calculator the way they say, and they're not going to count all the, they're only going to count. I mean, I've stopped my other job. I'm only doing YouTube. I'm self-employed. Maybe I make $100,000 a year. But of that $100,000, there's, $70,000 worth of expenses. So I'm making less. So they're going to set child support to this lower number. No, they're not. They're going to look at your entire number. Her attorney is going to say, oh, you're making, I think in the calculations he uses that when he tries to show it is $70,000 a month. He says it's arbitrary. I don't know necessarily if, maybe, I don't know if those are real numbers or whatnot, but he keys in the numbers. It spits out the $5,000 or right around that a month. And that's like the California calculator. Just if you're in California or if you're in your state, go, California child support calculator, Georgia flouts child support calculator, Florida child support, whatever. And normally your state will have a calculator. You key in the numbers, it'll tell you what it is. And normally when they first start out, pumpkin is going to be completely unemployable. You're going to be the scumbag that made all the money and held the purse strings and was financially abusive and wouldn't let little pumpkin, little butterfly have access to the accounts. And they're going to say, okay, clickety click, clackety clack, temporary support in this situation is $5,000. Dink, gavel down, next, and he's walking out going, what the fuck? What about I haven't seen my kid in whatever. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Next hearing, we'll schedule that off. And the reality is, just to throw this out here too, the way this stuff typically works, when she filed and said she wanted to establish child support, if him and his custody issues were not listed, not being talked about today, you can apply for another hearing to have that matter heard. In my scenario, one of the ways that helped me out is when we finally were getting ready to go to court, my ex was like, we want to add in that little Miss Butterfly wants to move out of state and take the kids and have full custody. Will you guys stipulate to add that on to the hearing? And I went, fuck you. No, I would not do that. I did not agree to that. I'm like, nope, you can frickin' file another hearing and we could come back for another whole dime and do that again. Anyways, I will say that I'm impressed that TechLead here is not super angry through all of this. But, hey.
Pause. This video is brought to you.
Hold on. I should have did this differently. I don't want to do the ad.
As soon as you show them your finances and, if you're a higher earner, they say, you know what? We need double the retainer right away.
Okay.
And
so
they just start billing you for everything. If they send an email.
Guys, and what he was mentioning is he was talking about the disclosures. When you first start this thing out, the first thing your attorney are going to ask for is your financial accounting. They want to know the way they couch it. Well, we need to know this so that, little Miss Butterfly knows every dime that you have and every dime she has. The reality is that your attorney gets a freaking access to your entire records. And if they're sitting there going, oh, wow, TechLeads here has, $7 million in the bank. He makes, $70,000 a month. Holy crap. This guy's got a lot of freaking money, and then just let me pull this back up so you can see the screenshot. And when I first realized this, what he's showing is the 10-minute increments they're charging. So his attorney, you're looking on this, like right here. He's $400 an hour. And every time they do anything, and if it's under a 10-minute increment, if you call them on the phone and say, "Hey, how's everything going?" and they go, "It's going, it's okay. We're waiting for whatever." That's $40. And if that conversation is 10 minutes and 1 second, it now rolls into 0.2, which means it's $80. And he's talking about before, it's like, and if two attorneys are on the call, then you double it. That killed me. I mean, when I was looking at that, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it's like, I think about you and you charge me money. Yeah. So for you guys who are out there, when you throw, I mean, like lower earner people, like whatever, it's going to be like, oh, okay, well, the retainer's $4,000 or $3,000, anywhere from like $3,000 to probably $10,000. I would say typically what happens is within the first month, that money is gone because the hours that it sets up to set up your file, set you up in the computer, build your folder, review your documents, they charge you for all of that. I burned through my retainer in like a month, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, I don't mean to swear. Let's jump back into this.
10-word email is $40 for that. And they just bill you everywhere. If they have a conversation with a colleague about your case, it's another several $100s, even though you didn't ask them to have that conversation. If you have a conference call and two of the attorneys of the firm show up, then you get billed at 2x the rate.
And he's also going to talk about
$400.
He's also going to talk about how if you are really special and you get set up to pay for your ex's attorney, then you have a whole nother thing going on. I only got caught up with having to pay like a little bit of that, and then I was able to add into the court paperwork that it was fucking done. So I only ended up paying a few $100s of hers. So let me move. I'm just gonna zoom through this because we're. All right, so this is where he's talking about, let me pull this up, the calculator.
And so each state is a little bit different, but if you come into the guideline calculator for California, you can actually plug in some numbers. And you'll see that
I've spent a ton of time on this freaking site keying in scenarios to understand exactly, and it's pretty accurate. The only problem is that some of the offsets and some of the things they count for you and some of the things they won't count for her.
Two things that matter. How much money you make. We can put in, say, $70,000 per month, just as an example. And then the percentage of time that you spend with the child. So, if you spend 0% time, then you end up paying more. If you spend a lot of time, then you pay less. So let's say you spend 0% of the time, earn $70,000 per month. Based on that, you would pay $5,300 per month in child support.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I almost want to run those calculations because $70,000 a month, and only paying $5,000. I'm actually surprised by that. Now it could be that because in my scenario, I had 3 kids plus there was alimony, so I was just getting raked across the coals, over the coals. Let me see if I can zoom through some more of this. Get to the point.
If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, I would recommend to stay in the household. Don't just move out thinking you're going to get some peace.
What he's talking about here, and I've had a few people who've done this. This is really what he's What he's talking about right here is stay in the house. Do not leave. Make sure that you're physically there. So the first time you go in the house, so you're in the same house with the child or the children. And the reason is that way because when they go in to make temporary support, well, you're both living there, so it makes it really complicated. The problem with this is if you're dealing with somebody who's high conflict and toxic, and they decide to file restraining orders and try to say that you're abusive or you did something and get you arrested, you can find yourself in a situation where you have a family court case and you have a criminal case. And then as soon as that happens, they're going to want to push the support when you have a criminal case and you're kicked out of the house and you can't see the kids because now it's easy to say, oh, well, you don't get to see the children, so 100% to the other parent and maximum amount of money. And oh, by the way, now you're paying for the family court attorney, now you're paying for the criminal attorney. The advice on this, there's logic to it. You just have to be really, really careful and anticipate that you probably at some point may have police officers knocking on your door saying that you've done something, and just, just be careful. I mean, you got to be really careful. So I understand what he's saying on this. I don't necessarily agree with it because of the overall risk to you. And like in my scenario, the ex, shortly after I moved out, did start playing that I was stalking her and just harassing her. I mean, and the reason is because I went to go get the kids, and she's like, "I've decided you can't see the kids," and I'm like, "You don't get to decide that." Apparently, she did. Anyways, so and that was their threat. Their next threat was, we're going to file a restraining order. You're angry and mean and dangerous and big, and she's a little butterfly, and yada yada. So it just is what it is.
Everybody, and you'll figure it out later on, because the family court is going to maintain whatever that status quo is. If you want to stay with the kids and get some custody, you need to stay with them and just go back to that household, even if there's conflict. If the other person gets mad, starts shouting, telling you to get out of the house, just pull out your phone, record it. Don't touch them, and just continue recording, but don't vacate that house. All right, now here's the thing I want.
See, he's spot on with that. You just got to be really careful. I couldn't do it. And I have law enforcement family. They told me when I was thinking about staying in the house because I didn't think I could afford it. They're like, "You are out of your freaking mind." I had my brother he's like, "Look, if I get a call and there's a mark on her, you're going to jail. You are an idiot if you stay in that house." And personally, I don't like jail. Never been in jail. Don't want to be in jail. So I left. And then I had to deal with what he's talking about. She had a primary control. As soon as we started the court, she started slowly, unilaterally making decisions that I couldn't see the kids, and it was all to drive the numbers up. Now, ultimately, I got 50-50, and I had to, so I mean, it worked out. It just was, it was painful. It was not good. All right, let's see. Let me see if I can zoom through here. So here he's just talking about, he's just talking about the rent and how much, they take away and how you really don't have any room to live. In this scenario, or in this situation, he was also talking about how he's like, "Hey, I'm renting a room from my parents' place to do whatever." And he said the court basically said, "No, you're not. We don't believe you. You're living there for free. So we're not going to say that the amount of money you're paying that's bull. They're not doing that." And guys, keep in mind, that's exactly what your ex's attorney is going to do. They're going to go around and they're going to try to say that you are lying about everything. You're hiding money. It's not true. You're being just continuing to be financially abusive like you've always been. And just, you need to anticipate that. Now, if he was really paying stuff, he probably could have, actually had a place he'd rented on his own and everything. But the guy's emotionally a wreck, and he's probably staying with his parents just to try to help make sure that he doesn't unalive himself. So let me move forward more on this.
Get a child support order on you. It may be very difficult to retire because people assume you're going to be bringing in this income year after year. And so if you suddenly say you want to just retire and stop working, people are going to say, "No, you got to keep working. Why is your income dropping?"
Yeah, and that's a tough one. It shouldn't be this way. I know in other countries like the United Kingdom, that's not the scenario. If your income drops, they just automatically change it. I wish the United States was like that. The problem here is like just what he was talking about. If he said he was planning on retiring, and who knows, if we want to say he's being a butt, maybe he, I'm going to retire, so I'm not making any money, so there won't be any child support. And then they come in and say, "Oh, well, he's lying," and oftentimes they'll turn around and they'll say, "Well, wait a minute, you were making," like in the scenario he was talking about, $70,000 a month. We know you can make $70,000 a month. Hey, dumbass, get back to work. And if you don't, we're going to set everything at that amount and still order you to get paid, you to pay it. And we're going to garnish your pay. And if you don't pay it, then we're going to take your licenses and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to overly depress anybody on this. And the sad part about this, if you're at beginning stages of this and you watch something like this, it can be incredibly, I hate to use the word triggering, but it can be incredibly triggering because you're like, wait a minute, what? You know, like in his scenario, you mean my wife takes the kids to a different country, I don't get to see them, and the recourse on this is I pay, 45% of my take home pay to this person. That's what happened. I mean, she didn't take him out of, didn't leave the country or whatever. I prevented that. The difference, what TechLead did and what I did is when I knew that the ex was going to try to leave the state, I filed immediately and I fought that hard, that because I did that is one of the reasons why, in my opinion, I have 50-50 custody and they didn't leave. She didn't leave. So she was planning on it. I mean, hell, she told everyone, I'm leaving. I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving. And they're like, well, you can leave. You can leave. You just can't take the kids, maybe.
You're capable of working, get back to work. You can't just take a break. You have an obligation to continue bringing in this income, whatever it was.
Yeah, that part's really frustrating. Let me scroll up here.
For my other businesses, people just imputed all of that income on me. They didn't separate it. And they even took a look at some of my business expenses like travel expenses, and they said, you know what, this is all going to be not considered, and they're going to consider that part of income as well. They wouldn't accept that as business expenses. They looked at rent.
He was trying, he does collaborations, so I'm sure he put in there, hey, I had to travel. I went and did these videos. It cost me X amount of dollars to go make this video. So, there's an expense for me to make the money. And what he's saying is the court said, nah, we don't care about what it cost you. That was just, what they basically did is like, oh, well, you were just traveling. So that was your entertainment. So that's on your dime. So that number isn't taken off the end, right? Like in a business, if you're running a business, instead of like in a normal job, you get paid $100,000, right? And you get paid, and then you pay everything else. Well, if it's a business, and the business brings in $100,000, but then you have rents and equipment costs and everything. Well, those numbers get put in, and the number goes from 100,000 to 70,000 to 50,000, and that's what the profit is. That's what he's talking about. And he's saying what they did is they said, nope, we think that you made the entire amount. All these expenses we're not going to count. So, and this is where he's talking a little bit about...
that my business would be paying to my parents, right? Like, I rent space for my parents. They said, you know what? We don't believe it. You're just living with your parents. So even that was not considered a legitimate business expense. So they just imputed a lot of income.
And part of the problem with that is the way they argued it wasn't right. And probably it was a temporary hearing to establish support. And they're like, no, we're not going to discuss that now. We don't believe it. Mom needs to get some money. We're going to set this up, set some ground rules, and you're going to come back. So, but his attorney did not do a good job on that.
On me. So the courts can be ruthless. Maybe in my situation, people just said, hey, that's a YouTube channel. That's not a real business. YouTube isn't a real business. Therefore, we're not going to allow any of those business separations or protections. Maybe I didn't hire a good enough lawyer. But in either case, the money has never been important for me. I just wanted to get to a point where my ex-wife would be somewhat appeased and just get to some settlement. Any agreement is fine by me. I'm perfectly happy having a cup of coffee at home playing video games. So it wouldn't change my life one way or another. And for those people who are saying I should get into this huge legal court battle and fight for my rights, I just don't believe that a legal victory is a personal victory, right? Like legally, you can win whatever you want, but if it leaves everybody just bitter and angry, I would not consider that a victory necessarily. And last of all,
I just want to jump in here. I mean, what he just said right there, it took me years to get to the point to understand this. Years. I mean, because in the beginning of this, I was so angry and I was bitter and frustrated, and I wanted some justice, and I wanted some, I'll just say justice. For him to be at the point where he's talking about saying this, and he's really taking a more bigger picture view at this, which is outstanding. The problem is that he's hoping that his ex is going to see that he's being nice and will calm the F down. The only way that's going to happen is if she is not a toxic, narcissistic, cluster B personality type. If she is, this will never, the only thing that will happen, the way he'll be able to achieve some success on this is with some serious court victories. The reality is especially with her being out of the country, it's going to complicate the crap out of it. We'll have to see what happens later on this, but his mindset and his approach, and he's been able to find his peace, like he said. He's happy. He can, he's happy in his life. He doesn't need a lot, and he's okay. Took me a long time to realize that. When I talk about rebaselining my life and finding my new level point or whatever to find my peace, that is what he's talking about right here is critical for your sanity. Now, I know anybody who's in the early parts of this are probably saying, how can you not fight for your child? How can you let her get away with this? How can you're a pansy or whatever. Now, he's trying to make the most of a horrible situation, and to be perfectly honest, he's doing a pretty good job of it. So I'm definitely impressed with that. Let me see if we can get a couple more.
Well, it is just money after all. And you know what they say, if your only problem is money, then you don't have a problem. But that'll do it for me. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know your thoughts.
The takeaways on this, you need to understand what you're dealing with when you walk into family court. Going in there, like he was talking about in the beginning, and just getting slaughtered, that happens because you have your head in the sand, you're not fully engaged on it, and you don't understand exactly what is going on. And this is the type of crap that happens. So if you're at the beginning stages of this, you need to learn as much as you possibly can. Learn about the patterns of behavior for people who are high conflict, which is what my whole channel is about, so that you understand what they're doing and you're more effective in this fight to get some sense of fairness in the midst of this. So on this, I'll leave a link to his full video. If you're interested, check it out. The guy's a pretty interesting dude. If you're into computer stuff, you may already know him. And on that, I hope you're doing well. I hope that you've been able to stay away from the bug, unlike I was able to do. Wasn't able to do or whatever, right? It freaking nailed me, and it's not been fun. So on that, I will catch you guys on the next one. Take care.